All right. I'm going to see if I can share my screen. Oh, Wendell, did you want to say anything? Did you didn't introduce yourself?
Well, I didn't introduce myself. I was trying to help co-host the meeting for Steve Harrington, but I wasn't able to become a co-host, so I couldn't help out in getting this started. So I'm glad you got started, but there's probably no reason for me to stay on because I haven't really read the chapter.
That's actually not been an excuse heretofore, but so you're welcome to stay on and join us. And if you have other things, you're welcome there as well.
Well, I'll stay on and see how I do.
All right. Sure. So, all right.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
So this is we're past the halfway mark this week, working on chapter 4, integral ecology. The Pope says, you can see there, our worldview has to change. Let me ask, any reflections from last week on the human roots, or any insights? What he is saying for him is the contradiction. No.
So I've got a note to myself in paragraph 111. Where he says that ecological culture cannot be reduced to a series of urgent and partial responses to the immediate problems. I'm complete.
Picking up on Dharma's comment, would you say that rampant image of development that we were living out of in the 80s that brought such success, not only that brought a lot of success and still seems to be a dominant way of operating, that Dharma mentioned as prevalent in the 80s? Is that what he's talking about, do you think, as what do you call it, the globalized technocratic paradigm? Human beings imposing their own laws and interests on reality.
Well, I was looking at paragraph 112, and in the middle there it talks about needing liberation from the dominant technocrat paradigm. In fact, it does in fact happen sometimes, for example, when cooperatives of small producers adopt less polluting means of production and opt for a non-consumerist model of life, recreation, and community. And that reminds me of something I just heard from some of the women from Africa who said, you know, we don't want these little bitty loans that you're giving out to women in Africa. We want the big loans that the boys get. And so I thought that was, you know, okay, wake up world. They don't want anything less than anybody in any other country. And we're giving them chicken feed, it sounded like, from what she was saying. So I don't know, just an observation from what I've heard. And I don't know if that's a liberation or drawing people into the technocratic paradigm. But yeah, so do you think about mechanization and the way we handle crops and so forth? We're out across those fields and we're plowing them over and all kinds of things. Whereas if we don't plow them under in the fall, it holds the soil down rather than it blowing away. There's a lot of things that can be done, but everybody wants to be ready for the next season to plant the next crop. And they've got the big machines to do it. So, there's a lot of mechanization. And then you think about your carbon footprint in travel. And so here we are having these meetings instead. And instead of getting on a plane and going halfway across the world to do it. And yet all of this technology that we're using takes some work too, doesn't it? And cost. There's cost to it. Not everybody can be involved in it. So I don't know what that means. What I just said, I don't know what that means.
Mhm.
Just a lot of thoughts that I've been having.
Anyone else before we dive in?
Continuing from that topic, technology helps us to do lots of stuff. I mean, it's a tool for use, but he hints at the fact that technology changes us too. And I was just thinking, at one time when I used to see people going around with mobile phones, I used to think, each of these mobile phones cost so much. How can people afford to have them, And then now you see people walking around with phones, and I keep thinking that's quite a lot of money sitting there, How were they able to afford it? And then the other thing is, the mobile phones are being used for more than just as tools. Now they've become part of our lifestyle, In other words, we are using it not to deal with a problem, we are using it for new things. And a lot of it is actually kind of wasting time, checking on Facebook, all those other things, when you go on a bus and you sit there, you'll see people just looking at their phones, not looking at each other. And the thing is, they're not really looking at anything important in most cases. They just found another way of dealing with the time that they have. So in that sense, the technology has changed us. We are not using it as a tool, but we have somehow become transformed, to do things that we normally wouldn't be doing. I'm complete.
You brought up some things that we've been working on recently. We're putting a class together for people to learn how to be have virtual meetings and to have them be productive, and to become that virtual facilitator that can lead them in a productive manner. And what we're finding out is that people my age still have this fear of technology, but the youth have no fear in that, but they have no clue how to do the face-to-face social stuff because of what you just said, Dharma. They're into their phones constantly. And yet, again, an African story, this woman was handed this beautiful CD that had this wonderful music that was recaptured from her community, and so they gave it to her as a gift because she was whatever age she was. It was because of her birthday, and to celebrate her and the community and so forth. And she says, well, what am I going to do with that CD? She says, oh, well, I can get that on my phone, that music. So she didn't need the CD anymore. So, people step beyond certain generations of technology as well. And so I don't know. Funny things along the way.
Anyone else? I recall an early, in my facilitation career with ICA, first time I did a major project that had to do with the environment. My daughter was in high school, And I told her, I said, well, this is an estuary project and we're working on this environmental project. And she looked at me and she said, well, Dad, finally you're doing something important. That's interesting. And then I explained to her, we'd identified 4 critical factors. There was the natural factor, that was the plants and the animals and the terrain and stuff. And then the human factor, which was the people and their interrelationships living in this estuary. And then there was the management factor that had to do with regulations and research and so forth and so on. Oh, she said, we have something like that in my ecology book. And so she pulls out her ecology textbook from high school, and way at the back, it's got this section on traditional societies. I wish Karen Newkirk was here. And they had a triangle, and it was natural factor, human factor, spiritual factor. Just a little bit like the Pope, that you got your neighbors and the world and God. And then I thought, okay, this is good. So we got rid of spirit and replaced it with management. And then I was thinking to myself, in some ways that speaks to me what he was pointing to, that whatever comes up, we rely on ourselves as human beings to innovate, to make it work, to set up an organization or create a plan to deal with the full confidence that we can figure it out. And then we keep getting surprised by the consequences that are there. And we also keep getting amazed by how much we keep going, how much we keep growing, how addictive it is to take charge of things. And anyway, so he proposes an integral ecology. Did you have a chance to?
Yeah, there's an email from Karen Newkirk. She says, sorry, I can't hear you today. I wanted to be in the conversation today, but have technical problems and I cannot attend next week. I hope that I can join on the January 12th meeting.
Beautiful. So who had a chance to look at chapter 4?
I go through most parts of it, not everything.
I went through and read it and underlined about that. Can you guys see my picture? No?
No.
Okay, I don't know why my camera isn't working.
If you could be sitting in a really dark room.
Anyway, I'll do what I
So what sentences caught your attention? Maybe in this, he starts off, since everything is closely interrelated and today's problems call for a vision capable of taking into account every aspect of the global crisis, I suggest that we now consider some elements of an integral ecology, one which clearly respects its human and social dimensions. So that sort of caught my attention.
Ellen here. On paragraph 143, he makes the statement that culture is more than what we have inherited from the past. It is also, and above all, a living, dynamic, and participatory present reality, which cannot be excluded as we rethink the relationship between human beings and the environment.
What do you suppose he's pointing to with that?
Well, the rethinking is broadening my consciousness about inclusive of everything. And he goes on in paragraph 144 to talk about all members of the community must be involved. And where I struggle, because I've already looked at chapter 6, is he's actually putting all of this into a Christian context and using Christian images, and I'm wondering to what extent people may refuse to be involved because they feel that it's only that and I'm complete.
Yeah, in answer to the question that you asked, Vigil, yeah, to me, the thing that struck me on that paragraph that you just read out is that culture is actually a dynamic more than just what should I say, the stuff that we get handed down by generations. You know, there is a dynamic process going on where, you know, the way people are relating to each other, the way people are talking, the way people create symbols and all of that. And that's really the cultural dynamic. And that's what says, you know, otherwise you will have this whole thing of, you know, our traditions and so forth and all of that, which sometimes can be deadening because you got to deal with people where they are, what's happening to them, you know, what's happening to them within what they're talking about, thinking about. That cultural process is at work, and it's that process that needs to be tapped, rather than the historical. Although the historical part of it is important too. I'm complete.
Yeah, you know, it strikes me oftentimes what comes up from the historical and gets pushed has to do with justifying something that's going on in the present. This is particularly true, I think, in terms of religions. I mean, there in the Christian world, there's always not. I don't think there's ever been more than 4 or 5 things that get emphasized, and everything else gets ignored. But at any moment, all of a sudden, this story is the most important story. Or you take in the United States right now, the Second Amendment about the right to bear arms? That's the really important thing. I think it has less to do with people studying the Constitution than people being anxious in the moment and looking for something they can grab from the past that feels like an anchor that they can hold on to.
This is Wendell. When I study Ralph Waldo Emerson, he's talking about culture as trying to get people below the level of the forms and the customs and the habits to the way we think about the universe, the way we think about ourselves, the way we think about our relationship to these. And I think these dynamics that we referred to here really have to do with those dynamics, and that's where our depth understanding is important, and we need to find ways to enable other people to relate to that deep understanding in themselves beneath the customs and beneath the habits. I'm complete.
I think Francis continues to push us to understand our interrelationship with everything on earth and beyond. I think that's a lot of what this is all about. I think people have lived thinking that we are so far above anything on earth that humans are, and of course certain humans are above other humans and so forth and so on. And I think this is one of the keys that Francis is pulling forth, is helping us to understand how interrelated we are with each other, not just in the country we live in or the community, but across the globe and with every creature on earth and every plant or whatever, water, the whole works. I'm complete.
Yes, I was looking at that paragraph 144 again, and at the bottom there, the second last sentence, he talks about it demands the constant and active involvement of local people from within their local culture. It's just going back to this whole thing of the cultural dynamic. And I was just thinking about, if you look at countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, and other places where a rapid change has happened because of economy. For instance, the whole plantation culture that we have, oil palm plantations that have been set up in Indonesia and in Malaysia, and then people go and live there, and their whole life is changed because now they work in the plantation industry, and it's usually an industry controlled by by a big multinational or something, and it kind of imposes things on people. So in other words, their lifestyle doesn't come out from within their culture. It comes out from this system that has been imposed. And usually the system has been imposed not because of the needs of those people. It's not like people said, we need more oil here, or we need more jobs from oil palm plantations. Some government just gave this big multinational a huge spans of land, of forest to cut up, and they planted oil palm and got people to come and work in there. It's so here you have a case of where an industrial system imposes a context, and so the society develops out of that imposed context rather than from within the culture of the people. I think he's getting at that somehow. At least that's what I think. He seems to be saying the world has to evolve from what's happening with people within. I'm complete.
This is Dave Rebstock. That paragraph 144 starts out with a consumerist vision of human beings encouraged by the mechanisms of today's globalized economy has a leveling effect on cultures, diminishing the immense variety which is the heritage of all humanity. And I'm struck by where he goes with this chapter. Later, he points to the principle of the common good on page 104, paragraph 156. Human ecology is inseparable from the notion of the common good, a central and unifying principle of social ethics. The common good is the sum of those conditions of social life which allow social groups and their individual members relatively thorough and ready access to their own fulfillment. Then at the end, he goes into justice between generations. And what I keep coming back to is in your chart, Jim, your 12th point, which is in the last column, what does Francis mean when he says an ethical and cultural decline has accompanied the deterioration of the environment? And when you talk about the consumerist mindset, you're into the ethics and the effect of that dynamic on the culture, on all cultures. Whether it's forced from the external, like in the case of palm oil, or if it's forced from something that happens within a country. I'm complete.
I just want to interject here. I received a message that says we have 6 minutes and 53 seconds left in this meeting unless I upgrade to a pro account for $14.95 a month. Oh, did everybody see that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I tried to click it to upgrade, but now I don't know what to do. So this meeting may not last very much longer.
Well, that's a lesson for us, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
That's a lesson for us. Let's not be consumers. don't upgrade, I say.
Right. So I would like to go to paragraph 159 on justice between generations. And let's see, it's the last sentence in the first paragraph. It's a long paragraph. It says, it's this, it is on loan to each generation, which must then hand it on to the next. An integral ecology is marked by this broader vision. And of course, that's talking about the earth and what all that has to do with it.
So I would suggest, I'm going to jump down to a question a little ways down since we only have 5 minutes and 43 seconds left. I would suggest that Teilhard de Chardin described exactly this when he said, the task before us now, if we would not perish, is to shake off our ancient prejudices and to build the earth. That Nikos Kazantzakis in 1927, when he published his book, Saviors of God, A Spiritual Exercise, pointed out that the relationship between human beings and the earth was a critical component that had to be dealt with. And I would suggest that much of this, if you go back and read the United Nations, much of this in the musings and stuff of the Institute of Cultural Affairs, the Ecumenical Institute, and the Order, it was part of the vision behind getting involved in Babi Harsh, for example, Dharma. Part of the wisdom about getting involved in the Marshall Islands, David. Part of the wisdom, Kathy, of needing to get everybody to participate in this. So my question is, why is it taking so long? 28 years ago, the UN had a commission, and they published this Our Common Future, which I happen to have right here from that time. Why is it taking so long to move to an integral ecology?
Well, I was thinking about this, and as you say, the planetary crisis was visible even then. I would say one is parochialism, where people think only of their own nations, and as a result, you've got cases where, like today, look at what's happening with China demanding that it's got the right to take over islands on the South China Sea and develop it, and US having its own laws. There is no there's no decision to work together. It's like, well, it's the whole thing of exceptionalism, and it's catching on with so many other nations. So you don't have there's not the possibility of a consensus. And like it or not, if the big movers and shakers don't get together, a lot of this thing is not going to happen. So yeah, I would say parochialism, and the second one is corruption. Corruption in this sense that holding leaders accountable. In Malaysia, for instance, one man single-handedly wiped out all the forests in Sarawak, and that was the chief minister type. He sold it to Japan, which was needing a lot of timber at that time. And that's what's happening around the world. I'm complete.
Well, the other side of this, of course, as Wendell, was that global warming wasn't so obvious, but our social networking has connected us with in such a powerful, instantaneous way that we can't escape the global warming. We can't escape the news. We can't escape the awareness. And to me, that's part of why it's taken so long, is that we had to feel that connection, and we had to feel the crisis was coming. The polar bears are dying and so forth. I'm complete.
Perhaps it is that we're the level of change that's happening, certainly as radical as the change from pre-civilization to civilization is deep, and you could say it's actually going really, really fast. It just feels slow because of the immensity of it all. One minute and 10 seconds to go.
I will say,
Happy New Year to everybody.
I'd like to comment, this is Paul,
Go ahead, Paul.
on paragraph 160 at the end, that he says, what we need to see that what is at stake is our own dignity. And he talks about us being accountable to the future and to the past. But that struck me as being able to say what this is about, is an argument to do it. It's our own dignity that's at stake. I'm complete.
Since we have such little time left, I thought I would throw in one thing that's been bugging me, and it's totally